Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. This is Praveen Mishra. I'm Dean of Vijayabhumi School of Design. Welcome to a very, very special webinar hosted by Vijayabhumi University, India's first liberal professional university. So today we are having conversation with two very, very special people. Let me introduce Mr. Sam Balsara, Chairman of Madison World. Let me introduce him very quickly. The Economic Times Brand Equity Ad Agency Reckoner ranks Sam as India's most influential media person for 11 years. Sam is also the recipient of the Advertising Agencies Association of India's Lifetime Achievement Award, Ad Club of Kolkata's Hall of Fame Award, and has entered the International Advertising Association's Hall of Fame. Sam is currently the head of the completely Indian-owned Madison World, which offers services in 11 specialized functions in advertising, media, business, analytics, out of home, PR, retail, rural, activation, entertainment, and sports. Over the past 32 years, Madison has grown to become India's largest Indian-owned communication company, employing about 1,000 communication experts. With offices in India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Thailand, serving around 500 advertisers. Sam has over 45 years experience in marketing, advertising, and media, of which the last 32 years have been entrepreneurial. So let's welcome him. With him in conversation is going to be our very dynamic director of IFM Business School, Dr. Atish Chattopadhyay. He's also the Vice Chancellor of the Vijayabhumi University, India's first liberal professional university. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Praveen. Sir, a very warm welcome to this webinar.
Thank you.
And it's a great privilege to have you. We have got people joining from all across the world. So we have got people like the Dean of State University of New York, or your friend Shudipto Sinha, who has probably worked with you long back. He was with IMRB, or even the director designate of IIM Bangalore. He was there in 1978 in the Born Vita quiz contest and interacted with you.
Oh, wonderful.
So all of them has, conveyed their regards also to you, and they're all looking forward. We are looking forward to hear from you. So let's, start.
Hello,
by
everyone, all my friends.
Thank you so much. So let's start, because Praveen left with your entrepreneurial journey. And I would like to start with this question. What made you, to go for entrepreneurship? If you can briefly describe as to how you thought of entrepreneurship and what made you go there.
Okay, so, well, my story is that I did not become an entrepreneur because I always wanted to be one, or that I had a dying ambition to become an entrepreneur, or that I wanted to be my own boss, or that I wanted to make a lot of money, or any of those things, which I believe are the reasons today why many people are becoming entrepreneurs. And many people also sell their businesses within 3-4 years of starting them. So as you know, I'm running my business for the last 32 years and still going on. I'm now almost touching 70. So I was working in an agency, a smallish agency called Mudra. Again, it was an Indian agency started by the Ambanis, started actually as an in-house agency to sell Vimal fabrics in those days. And I joined them to start their Bombay office. And we had some early success at Mudra, I would say. Having achieved some success, Mudra soon developed the vision to become India's largest advertising agency, and perhaps rightly so, from the lens of the promoters. That why should India's largest agency be a foreign-owned agency? It should be an Indian agency. And we have everything that it takes to be India's largest agency. We understand India, we understand Indian consumer behavior, we have the talent, we have the resources. Now, that's where in my small head, I saw a little problem. At that time, I had philosophically come to the conclusion that a good agency is a small agency with a few large clients. So I soon developed this vision that I should possibly start an agency of my own, which would follow my vision of what is an ideal agency. And that is how, actually, very abruptly, I think from the idea first occurring to my mind sometime in January, Madison put up its shingle on March 21st, 1988.
Fantastic. So did you start, you started with two large clients, I think, Godrej and Nelco.
Correct.
And with
well, I must confess, both these clients were clients who I was intimately connected with in my Mudra days. So I think it was only natural that I approached them. And, to my, not I would say surprise, but to sort of make things happen, they readily agreed to give me their business. And that is how Madison started with releases on day one. Also, I must say that, I took a easy or a convenient way out. Instead of starting an agency from scratch, a friend of mine brought to my attention that there was an existing agency, an agency that was almost, I think, 20, 30 years old then, called Madison, which was kind of not really doing much. And it already had the accreditation, and it already had an office on the third floor of Zoroastrian building at Horniman Circle. So I kind of joined this agency as a partner with an understanding that, I would soon become its sole owner in 2 or 3 years.
Fantastic. So that was your approach towards, risk mitigation, so to say?
No, not at all. It wasn't. I mean, the risk was 100% mine, but it was just to get started instantly. In those days, maybe it is like that now also, is that, print was a very important medium, and you had to get INS accreditation, and it would take 6 months to get that INS accreditation. And INS accreditation was necessary for you to earn 15% commission and get credit from the newspapers. So this way, I overcame both these requirements and was able to get both the 15% commission and the credit from day one. And I quite liked the name Madison, so there was no need for me to change it. Madison, as you know, the name comes from Madison Avenue in Manhattan, New York, where in the olden days, most of the major global agencies had their headquarters.
Yes, fantastic. And 1989 was the year when the Synthol Lime campaign happened, and immediately it got around more than 5% market share. How do you look back?
Well, I must confess that I think while Synthol Lime was a great product, and I think we created some fantastic advertising for it during its time. But its meteoric success, I think, was partly contributed, surprising though it may sound to you, by some actions of our competitor Liril. So Liril, actually, it would appear that had got a little nervous about Synthol coming up with a line version, and actually took a few shots from our commercial, which was ready months in advance of the launch, and inserted them, however congruent it's looked and appeared, into their own commercial and put it on Doordarshan 1 week before the Synthol line film was to go on air. So I created a big shindig about it. I think in its time, it was perhaps one of the most controversial things that happened in advertising. Most of the large newspapers wrote several stories on this dispute, if I may call it so. In those days, we used to have India Today used to bring out a video program called News Track. So News
Absolutely.
Track covered this story on two different occasions. And I think all this controversy also played a small role in making Synthol line even more successful than it was destined to be.
You had number of successful campaigns. You had the Whisper campaign going on later on. Now, what is it that makes a campaign successful? A lot of MBAs, graduates, marketing professionals over here.
So as I see it, I have seen that, if I may call it, advertising technology has sort of evolved over the years. Right in the beginning, it was Rosser Reeves who propounded the USP theory, unique selling proposition. So, maybe that was in the 50s and 60s when it was felt that, for any product, you've got to identify a unique benefit that it could offer to the consumer. The benefit had to be unique. It could not be a me too benefit. And possibly in those early days, it was easy to find a me too benefit. Of course, where a unique benefit was not possible, advertising agencies went to great lengths to sort of create a unique benefit. But very soon it became clear that there is a limitation to finding a unique benefit. So then came the concept of positioning. It was felt that, you got to sort of position a brand in a certain way in the consumer's mind. So, in our advertising development program, the most important statement was to write out the positioning statement. You know, uh, After almost a decade or two of positioning, then came the decade of insights. It was thought that, good advertising, which makes people reach out to their wallets and actually spend the money, is that advertising which is actually based on a real good insight. And it was felt that an insight is something that, everybody could readily identify with. It was an occurrence or an event that most consumers can sort of readily identify with, but it's never talked about openly, nor has any other brand used that insight to base its advertising on. And I think that was the reigning technology, so to speak, for the creation of advertising. you know Subsequently, as this was developed, developing, also uh, thinking emerged that a lot of advertising in the early days appealed to the mind, and therefore, it would say things like 30% more or 30% more effective or kills germs 99%, and things like that. They were sort of rational benefits, or the justification was rational to make the claim credible. Subsequent thinking emerged that actually claims or appeals that appeal to the mind are not as powerful and not as long lasting as emotional appeals. So to give you a very good example, let's say Ariel, Procter and Gamble's detergent powder, in the early days would say, it would remove stains efficiently. Or there would be a side-by-side demo where there would be a competing brand, and
Absolutely.
there'll be, Ariel, and predictably, the Ariel garment would be sparkling clean without stains and pure white, whereas the other garment would be a little gray or yellowy. Now, move that several decades, and what does Ariel do in its advertising today? It has a concept called share the load. So, it is sort of empathizing with the woman of the household who's the decision maker, or generally considered to be the decision maker uh, for detergent powder. And that's how, and it is felt that an emotional appeal like this would kind of achieve more permanence or more relevance for a longer period of time, and would also endear the brand to the consumer and make the consumer reach out to his wallet. Or if you take even Surf, which is the largest selling powder, Surf for decades used to say Surf washes whitest. And cut to a few years ago when the campaign said dirt is good. And where you have those two little kids stomp when the girl falls in a puddle, and the boy sort of beats up the puddle, and then they come home, and the overarching thought was dirt is good. So currently, I think the area we are in is what is generally called storytelling. Since there is so much noise in the market, and there are millions and millions of seconds of television commercials beamed on air. There are now about 700 television stations, and they beam millions of advertising time. So how, in this noise and clutter, how does one get remembered? And the thinking is that you've got to tell a story. And that is where comes in the skill of our creative advertising people and the filmmaker. Because, whilst, directors and producers of Hindi cinema can take 2 and 3 hours to tell their story, how does one tell an engaging story with all kinds of twists and turns and nuances in 30 seconds? And sometimes they do it in 15 seconds or 10 seconds. So that lies the skill. So that this is how, in my view, I would say advertising technology has evolved over the years.
I think that's fantastic way of taking us through from the days of USP to positioning, to the emotional appeal to the storytelling. I think
Yes.
nothing could have been better coming just from you. I think Today, you talked about just now the 700 media, TV channels, media fragmentation. And if we look back around 2011, okay, you talked about the 4-pillar strategy: automation, ideation, digitization, and diversity. Now, digitization, you were talking about around a decade back from now. Now, what made you, think in that way and look at those 4 pillars?
So those four, I don't know where you picked that up, but actually that was an internal Madison sort of strategy that emerged out of some brainstorming that we did. And I think at that time the thinking was that the world is changing. Of course, every generation you think the world is changing, and it does change. So at that time the thinking was that Madison sort of has done extremely well so far, but what do we need to do to make sure it continues to do well? So that is when we thought of these 4 pillars. And especially in the media area, we put a lot of focus on automation. uh, for example, it is thanks to automation that the last I remember, Madison could release 6 million individual spots in a year. And if not for automation and digitization and all of that, it would be impossible to uh, do such a phenomenal and massive activity, monitor it, bill it, collect the money, and pay the money to the media, and that too at a fraction of the cost. So clearly, automation and digitization at that time, which was our focus area, was bang on, because it is thanks to that today I think we're benefiting hugely for it. And we don't bat an eyelid. If I mean, it's also, I think, thanks to that today during the lockdown, where everybody is operating from home, and we had to do that at one day's notice, none of our campaigns have got disturbed, or any advertiser, any client of ours who wanted advertising has been able to get it without any disruption whatsoever. Of course, it's another story that the demand for advertising at a time like this itself has completely collapsed.
Fantastic, sir. I think that very well put answer that was. I believe you were much ahead of your times when you predicted about the digital being one of the pillars. Now, the title for today's seminar is the lessons from my life. So something I'll take something from your life. I mean, there are many aspirants, MBA aspirants in the group. There are over 169 participants right now. I think they'll benefit from your answer. So you passed out your basic degree exactly 50 years ago in 1970, right? So the management education, the MBA degree came to India only in the 60s. You chose
Oh,
to join.
1 minute, I must correct you, because that's an important milestone I'm looking forward to. I actually joined Jamnalal Bajaj Institute in 1970, and I passed out in 1972. So I'll complete 50 years two
Yes, sir.
years from now.
So that's the question basically. So the 50 years ago you actually joined, and 48 years you've been there as an MBA graduate. So in why did you choose to join such unknown course? What lessons, if you can pass
Yes,
on to the people
I think,
attending
I
this?
think that's an interesting question. You know, uh, after doing my graduation, or I was doing my graduation in commerce, and actually I was all set to become a chartered accountant and join the CA course, Well, why a CA course? Well, for the simple reason that my father was a businessman, and he was into finance and stocks and shares and all of that. And to cap it, my elder brother was a successful chartered accountant.
Okay.
So it was kind of a natural progression for me to go from BCom to MBA. But just at that time, there this new fangled thing called MBA had begun to emerge. And a cousin of mine was at IIM Ahmedabad and was soon going to pass out. And I was a little taken in by the management schools. Also, what fascinated me is the way I looked at it. you know, any fool could attempt to become a chartered accountant because, to become a chartered accountant, there was no entry barrier. There was only an exit barrier. But to be a management graduate, I would say there was an entry barrier and not really an exit barrier.
Wow.
So, I mean, obviously, I suppose being young and willing to take on challenges, having applied to some management schools, like I applied to IIM Ahmedabad and I did not get through. But fortunately, I got through with to Bajaj in Bombay, and that was convenient because my mother came from Bombay and she had a family house in Bombay. So then I moved from Bangalore to Bombay and joined my Bajaj course. And ever since then, actually, I've become a Bombayite.
Fantastic, sir. So that it's been 48 years that you have been an MBA graduate of JBIMS. Very interestingly, you chose to join a sales-oriented Indian company called HPMA, that's Home Products Marketing Association, owned by Sarabhais. In spite of being an MBA in marketing, you chose to join a sales-oriented Indian company. What made you do so? In retrospect, did you do the right thing?
Well, first, let me tell you, I'm very disappointed that you call Sarabhai a sales-oriented company. The way I see it is, I think it was one of India's first dedicated marketing companies. You know, Sarabhai had a company called Swastik Oil Mills,
Yes.
which used to make the swastik red castor oil. Maybe it was before your time and you have not seen that distinctive bottle. And it used to make Super 7 bar and a few other products, including it was the agency for Tinopal and things like that. And Sarabhai's, I think, very soon came to the conclusion that a very old organization like Swastik Oil Mills would not be able to change or morph into a modern marketing organization. So they decided to form a separate marketing company called HPMA, which would actually buy the products from Swastik Oil Mills and set up an entire marketing and sales distribution setup. So I think we used to be almost 30, 40 people in marketing. And of course, there were 300, 400 people on the sales side. And the reason why I joined them is very simple. The professor who taught me marketing, called Pran Chaudhary, he was a very respected and well-known person in marketing. He was then, I think, with I think Beechem or Hindustan Milk Food or something like that. He kind of joined Sarabhai's or HPMA as the marketing director, which was like virtually the CEO because this was only a marketing company. So he was kind enough to offer me a job, and since I was in awe of him, And later on, Tarun Gupta, who taught me marketing, who was also you know a very highly regarded marketing professional and a professor of marketing, had taught me marketing in the second year. My sort of interest in joining a pure marketing company was there. And since Pran Chaudhary offered me a job in his own company, I didn't have to look anywhere else.
That's wonderful, sir. So you have been running Madison, an agency for 25 years and have made it
No,
into
32 years.
30.
32 years.
Wow. So in your 48 years of your career, for 32 years, you have been running this agency. You have made it really, really big. So if you have to look back, what are some of the key decisions and moves
Sorry,
you
say
took
that
to
again.
come? I'm saying in these 32 years, what were the some of the key decisions you took to come to where you are today? And tell us what could be the learnings for the young managers of today, sir.
Yeah, so I would say the first phase was the foundation. And I think what I was saying would be considered stupid by today's standard is that for the first 5 years, we did not accept a third client. It's not that nobody approached us or nobody came to us giving us their business, but I was not confident that I had the bandwidth to actually take on more clients. And I did not want to let my two founding clients down. And I wanted to ensure that, my entire attention was focused on these two clients. So my approach at that time was more that I was a consultant to these two clients exclusively, rather than having a vision of founding a great agency or a big agency and stuff like that. But I think in hindsight, I think this was very important because I think it gave Madison a very strong foundation. Also, I think one interesting test that I put Madison to is I said, here am I, somebody with an MBA in marketing and with 16 years experience in Sarabai's, Cadbury, Contract and Mudra. Would I have joined this agency if the agency did not belong to me? So that is the test that I wanted to put Madison to. So Madison should have been that kind of agency which I would have happily joined even if I was not its promoter. So those were the foundation years, I would say. After that, of course, we began to, I think, slowly grow, as we sort of more people joined us and we had more success, we had a little more money, so we could increase our salary bill a little more. I think the second and very important phase in our lives actually was the age of specialization. So, around that time, this was around, I would say, 93, 95. In the US, the concept of a media AOR or the concept of unbundling of media had actually taken root. And our client, Procter and Gamble here, actually one fine day told me that, look, we have 4 to 5 agencies dealing with us, and we are thinking that why don't we consolidate media with one agency rather than dealing with 5 agencies. So that is how they called a media pitch, and surprise of surprise, we won the pitch. After winning the pitch, I remember, before the pitch, me making a trip to Manila, which was considered a little ahead of us in the AOR curve, and I think Indonesia, which was also considered ahead because they had already bought into the concept of AORs. And we made a success of the PNG AOR, and soon we began to enlarge our media loan business. And the success of the media loan business, in fact, the media loan business was so successful that people forgot that we were a creative agency. And I think this is one of the unfortunate prices that I've had to pay, that people began to ignore our creative business because they looked upon us as very good in media. But one another thing happened because of our success in media, and that is I got sold on the concept of specialization. So, I soon came to believe that specialization is good for clients. Of course, at that time, there was a growing belief that this unbundling, it was called unbundling then, that is the separation of creative and media, is going to spell the death knell of advertising agencies. And actually, my association, the 3ASI, in which I now play a very active role, in fact, have been playing an active role for many decades now, actually opposed this move tooth and nail. But unfortunately, very often you can try, but certain global sort of trends is difficult to kind of stop. You can try and delay them, but it's difficult to stop them. So with its success, I got convinced that specialization is good. And why is it good? Because I believe it develops a cadre of people who sort of develop a pride in their profession. They become better and better by doing the same thing over and over again. They enrich their profession by finding newer and more skillful ways of doing the job, bringing in more efficiency measures and making things more effective. And the client benefits because also, not only do they do a job faster, they do it better, and therefore the client gets it at a cost effective price. So, having seen the benefit of this specialization for myself and experienced it, I then took it to other areas. So, we then started a PR agency, that was headed by a true blue PR professional as the CEO. We then started an outdoor agency. We then started a rural agency. So like that, we have today 10 agencies in 10 different functional areas. And each of these agencies is headed by what I would call is a specialist. So I'm a great believer in hiring specialists. I think we need to have, in my view, generalists only at the Madison World corporate level, but each of our units I like them to be headed by who I regard as a specialist and somebody who's regarded as a specialist in that particular craft by industry as such.
Fantastic. So there are some questions which says that, how life changed as an entrepreneur. If you can share that and some of your, beliefs or learnings as an entrepreneur.
Uh, to be frank, I think my life did not change so much when I became an entrepreneur. When I became an entrepreneur, at least in the early years, because even at Mudra, I used to work 6 days a week. I used to get home at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night. At Madison, I did the same thing. So life didn't change too much. But I think my personal life and my personal orientation had to change dramatically when I moved from Cadbury to contract, that is from marketing to advertising. Because I think if I look back, I think not everybody is who is sort of good in advertising, so to speak, is well suited to be in an advertising agency. Because you have to understand that an advertising agency is a service organization, and however enlightened the client may be, ultimately you are there to service and serve the client, and the client is the boss. And even a junior person at a client's end, can pull rank over the agency. Now, this calls for, according to me, a tremendous mindset change. That, when you are a brand manager sitting at the client's office and you are sort of directing or giving instructions to various agencies, and when you turn over to the agency end, not only are you responsible for getting the work done, you are responsible for selling the work, and you have to make a mental orientation shift that you are in the service business. So I think, if I may say so myself, I think I'm reasonably egoless. And I think that very substantially helped in my transition from being a brand manager to being a client servicing person on the agency side.
That's fantastic, sir. You want to ask the second one? Can I ask one?
Yes, sure.
No, I would like to say, sir, the last part, if you repeat, I think the connectivity was little poor.
Yeah, what I was saying, in essence, is that, even if you're good in advertising, it may not automatically make you well suited to an ad agency unless you are able to make a mental switch from being a client to an agency. Because after all, an agency is a service organization, and you are at the beck and call of your client, and it is likely that the person who you are servicing on a day-to-day basis may be much junior to you, in both in age and in number of years in the profession. So you have to be able to handle this. And I was saying that what probably helped me in my switch from marketing to advertising is I think by nature I'm reasonably egoless.
I think that captures that gives a lots of insight into you as a person as well as a professional. See, there are lots of questions popping up. I think that there's a so I'll try to kind of capture it into very just few words. Like many MBAs today want to get into marketing role or maybe some part of advertising also, but do not like the sales profile. What will be your advice to them, sir?
So I think one of my beliefs as I've spent more years in advertising is that ultimately to make a success in life, you have to be a good salesman. Sorry, did you hear that? I said,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
whatever you are, whether you are in production or you're in manufacturing or you're a scientist or you're an R&D man, I think ultimately you have to be able to sell your idea, sell your project, sell your whatever you're trying to persuade the other person to do, or even the opposite sex. So there's no getting away from the fact that the ability to persuade and the ability to sell is a very important ability. Now, coming to advertising, I've also developed the belief that without, being offensive to anybody, I believe that it is easier to create a brilliant idea. It is more difficult to sell it to the client because very few ideas, when they first are conceived, become brilliant ideas. Think of it, of the two examples I gave you of share the load or, dirt is good. I think it is the ability of the creative person or the agency collectively to have sold this idea, and this idea running across the world today, that makes it a big idea. And today everybody recognizes it as a big idea that you and I are discussing. So I think there is no getting away from the fact that, selling, now I mean selling in a broader conceptual term, you can't get away from in life. I mean, even as a professor, what you're teaching, you're selling your idea in a way to your students. You're persuading your client, your students to accept a way of thinking, to accept you as a professor, to accept your style, your mannerism, and receive whatever information you're giving them in a way that is selling. Because a more brilliant person, academician, but who cannot put it across to students in a lively, energetic, informative, humorous way, would fail, according to me, as a professor. Whereas somebody else who has an innate persuasive selling orientation would ultimately make a better professor.
Absolutely. Can you share some of your beliefs, sir? Now that you talked about it is difficult to sell to the client a creative idea. Now, what are those beliefs that you would like to share that a good agency is like? You talked about your philosophy that a good agency is a small agency with a few large clients. So, are there some of those beliefs that you would like to share with the audience?
So one of my earliest beliefs, also one of the reasons why I started Madison and did not want to continue in Mudra as it became larger and larger, is I believe that a good advertising man has to be a craftsman and not just a manager of men and money. I mean, all large organizations, their CEOs, ultimately, when you're making motor cars or you're in an ad agency, if you have 1 lakh people, then ultimately the CEO is really just a manager of men and materials and money. So my belief is that, I think an advertising person must be a good craftsman and he should never lose his crafting skills, whatever they be, whether it is writing copy or whether it is client service or whether it is strategy. So he can't just immerse himself with the administrative aspects of the agency and not be involved in the guts of the business. Another belief that we developed some decades ago is it was a concept and then it was well crafted by a creative director as if it's safe, it's risky. And I think whilst this adage may work actually in most areas, I think in advertising is particularly important. I think the larger the campaign, the larger the organization, I have seen that they become more risk averse. Now, one would have thought that larger the organization, their ability to take the risk should be higher. But actually, in reality, it works conversely. The larger the organization, the more is the deliberation, the more is the, dissection in every which way of the problem and the solution, and there's so much of sort of discussion and debate and all that. Sometimes that doesn't work too well for advertising. The best of advertising ideas are actually created by one man and approved by the leader of the client organization, and he says, look, I believe in this, go ahead with it. And then you get boom. I think one outstanding example that I can give you is in the case of Fevicol, where, Pidilite is the client and Madhukar Bai, who is the chairman of the company now, has been involved with the creation of advertising for Pidilite, and Piyush, who's actually the head of Ogilvy, has been involved in its advertising for, I don't know, maybe over 2 decades. And then you see the advertising that comes out from Pidilite. I think most people would recall Fevicol and Fevikwik advertising readily.
Absolutely, sir.
So when you're creating an ad campaign, very often the tendency is to kind of tick all the boxes. And when you try to tick all the boxes, then you tend to play safe. And when you tend to play safe, you fail. Because then the reason why we are advertising, actually that is not met because it's too safe. It doesn't say anything, or it says it in such a ordinary, non-intrusive way that it fails to make any impact. So that is why, and I think this 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 adage works in many other areas too, because if you try to be entirely safe, I think it would work in investment too. Of course, you have to be cautious, but if you want to be entirely safe, then you're never going to be able to make $1 million. You'll have to take some risk somewhere, however intelligent that risk may be, but a certain amount of risk, unfortunately, you have to take in life. Otherwise, it's very difficult to achieve something. So that is why we have believed that if it's safe, it is risky.
I think we are.
Sorry. Yes, go on.
We're almost reaching towards the end. A couple of one announcement that I have, like we have exciting advertisement based quiz coming up. People just stay over. Even after the session ends, we are going to continue. Lucky winners stand a chance to win exciting vouchers. Stay tuned. Yeah. I'll just try to articulate one question from a participant, Ms. Seema Lal, saying, I think the example that you gave from like Meri Safed, Tumhari Sat Se Safed, from there to share the load, I think the whole proposition changes. From USP to ESP, that's emotional selling proposition, is it happening in its entirety? I think that's what her question is. So we move from USP to ESP in entirety. That's the question for you, sir?
Well, if by its entirety you mean is all advertising based on this approach? No, of course not. I think all advertising is not based on this approach.
Yes.
I mean, still you see a lot of advertising. See, there is also a difference between advertising and information. I mean, as somebody says, if you made a radically superior mousetrap, then maybe you don't need advertising. You just need to pass on the information, which is not really advertising. Then you may not need also an advertising agency. But where you have a very competitive landscape and where you have Me Too products, then you need all these sophisticated concepts and you need highly talented people to put together a package so that the housewife can reach out to her wallet.
I think that was very beautifully said, sir. Okay, I think that we are almost towards the end. The last question for you. Before that, for the participants, I believe please follow us on Instagram. Those Anand has shared those links, and on YouTube, the Vijayabhumi University channel. That's VUTV for you. So something that for 50 years in your career, what are the mistakes you think you have made?
Well, I guess the mistakes, if I look back, of course, I've made many mistakes. I think the first mistake is I was not that adventurous, or I should have been more of a risk taker than I actually have been. Secondly, I think I should have focused a little bit more and a little bit earlier on organization building at Madison rather than when I did. I would count these two as sort of reasonably big mistakes that I've made. I would not call the first thing that I did, which is not take on a third client for 5 years, although the client came to me, as a mistake. I think in hindsight, it strikes me that that was a good thing to do.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. So those who joined, we had a wonderful session. This recording will be available to you on the VUTV channel. That's Vijayabhumi University channel, YouTube channel. Please do follow us there. Atish sir is back. There was some connectivity issues. Sir, you have any final?
I have one question for sir. You know,
maybe there's some connectivity issues.
immutable laws of Madison, which you'd like to share.
Well, that's a bit long, but that's very interesting. You know, one of my, you know, some 10, 15 years ago, my daughter Lara joined Madison after having done her, you know, marketing course in England. And she was asked to make a presentation on Madison. And I was delighted that, you know, without discussing it with me, really, she picked on one of my favorite books, which is the 22 Immutable Laws of Advertising by Al Ries and Jack Trout. And she titled her presentation, I think, the 10 Laws of Madison. So there are some, and based on what she had seen Madison do, and more importantly, not do, you know, she sort of enunciated a few laws. So like one of our laws is the law of focus. So for example, over these 32 years, as we have become, you know, better known, you know, we get different business proposals. Somebody wants us to get into real estate. Somebody says, why don't you start a management school? Somebody says, why don't you start a primary school? And quite a few business proposals. But we have always avoided doing that because, you know, I felt that, no, I think we've decided our focus should be communication and advertising. So one is the law of focus. And I think in a narrow way, we are very narrowly focused on the fact that we have to make our clients grow, because Madison can only grow if our clients grow. It cannot be that Madison grows and our clients. So, for example, another law that we have is, you know, let me see which one I can think of, is the law of specialization. But I think I spoke to you about specialization some time back. So another is the law of diversification, which I spoke to you about. One that I didn't speak about is the law of conservation. You know, after all, we have to recognize that we are a solely Indian company, mainly operating in India with a little bit in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Thailand. But we don't have the resource. All our competitors are big billion-dollar corporations. They are the 5 major communication groups of the world, from WPP to IPG to Dentsu and the like. So we have to follow the law of conservation. So, you know, any expenditure that Madison undertakes has to be viewed through the lens of whether this expenditure will help our client. If it does not pass that test, then we would prefer to delay that expenditure or not incur it at all. For example, at a time when, you know, many agencies used to go on foreign trips routinely, we never did that. You know, if at all we needed to have a conference, we would do a conference in nearby Lonavala or wherever, or sometimes in the comfort of our own offices and things like that. I believe this law has also stood us in good stead, because, you know, there have been times over 32 years where we have come under some financial stress, but we've always come out of it successfully, I think, because we are conservatively managed.
Thank you so much, sir. One last before we say goodbye. I think this is out of dozens of questions that has come in. Because of time, I'm not asking you. Do you foresee any consolidation of small advertising or brand agencies post the COVID-19 lockdown?
Yes, I think a little bit of consolidation will happen. But let me also tell you that unlike in Western countries, Indian entrepreneurs are fiercely possessive about their businesses. And Indians by nature are like that. So I think I don't see too much of consolidation. Yes, of course, I think some amount of consolidation does happen. It's a natural progression. But I think more consolidation is likely to happen in the West than it is likely to happen in India.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. That was Mr. Sam Balsara, Chairman and Managing Director of Madison World. Thank you so much for
Okay,
being.
good talking to all of you, and bye-bye. Bye. Good meeting all of you.
Thank you so much, sir. And thank you,
Bye.
Dr. Atish Chattopadhyay, who is the Director,
Bye, Atish.
IFI Business School and Vice Chancellor, Vijay Bhumi University. Thank you both of you for gifting us such wonderful conversation. I think there were some connectivity issues, but still apologies for all that. But I believe we had some very meaningful insights into life and to the profession. Okay, so people just hang around. We say goodbye to both of you, and we'll
Okay.
continue. Thank you so much, sir. So people, you have your quiz on, the advertising quiz. I think it will be on for the next 10 minutes. So please do participate in that. There are vouchers to be owned, there are cash prizes there. And Kritika has shared the details of our website, our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, as well as the Instagram handle. Please do follow for updates from Vijay Bhumi University. We're starting this year with 4 schools. We are looking at education very, very differently. So during the lockdown, we are having many webinars so that you are engaged in good conversations about future, about careers, about life. And please do kind of join in our webinars. There are many of you have been joining on different webinars. So check out our calendars. That's always put up on our website. And please do participate. You're most welcome, Ms. Seema. So, so please continue doing that. I'm going to stay with you for another 5-7 minutes till you finish your quiz. And once you do that, you actually have a chance to win some prizes. I hope you enjoyed today's session. And thank you for hanging around. We had some technical issues for a while. You see, one of the windows has MBA 4.0, the new age specialization details that you have, and look at the full brochure on our website. It's a very interesting program, but lots of liberal education is kind of being included in the MBA curriculum. It's a very, very new thought. You discover yourself through a process. That's Howard Gardner's 8 multiple intelligence theory. And some of the visuals that has been running, I hope you have seen that. Where is the quiz being displayed? You go, I think there must be somebody can answer that. Pradeep, if you're there. Preeti Kaushik is asking, where is the quiz being displayed? So I'll have something else here. If you have any option of offers or quiz, just go there and you'll be able to find that, right? I think another few minutes, I think we should be done. Hope you enjoyed the session today. If you have any comments, any feedback, please do send it to us. You can send it in the comment box now. And once we upload the video, please feel free to share it on your social media handles or send it to anybody who would be interested in the conversation, the insights from life. Yeah. We had quite a few questions today. We couldn't take all because we had some technical issues. And I think we had a very kind of in-depth, candid conversation. So you probably have got some of the answers in some form that is going to make sense to you. So as Kritika says, it's under the offers. So please, Preeti ma'am, please click the offers. So the recording of this will be available to another couple of minutes maybe, and then we should be done about the quiz. Can I have some feedback from you? How much time do you need? Some of you, you're done. We still have 44 people. I think you're attempting to fill the quiz. You have a chance to win. We don't want to close till most of you are done. So look at our MBA 4.0 brochure. Download the entire brochure from the IFIM Business School website. Do have a look at it. The program is very, very exciting. You have things like management of communication design in it. And I'm actually looking forward to offer that from the communication design school that we are actually opening this year. And lot many exciting things are there. Okay, people, I believe I can say goodbye to you. It was very nice hosting this session. In fact, for me, it was nice when two very interesting people, they talk. You always get a lot of insights and you're able to connect with your own life and your profession, right? So I'll move out from here. I'll just switch off my audio and video. And probably you'll have another few minutes to finish this thing, and then the event will be ended. Yeah. So as of now, please allow me to move. Thank you so much. Have a very nice evening, and stay safe, stay healthy. Take care. Yeah. Bye.